You know, when you think of the Declaration of Independence, you probably pictured that old fancy parchment, right? But what if it's more than just a museum piece? What if it's actually a list of complaints, so basic, so fundamental, that we can still use them to size up our leaders today? Let's dig in and see just how relevant this nearly 250-year-old document really is. Honestly, the best way to think about the Declaration is exactly like the source material says. It's a breakup letter. I'm serious. It's the American colonies telling King George III, look, it's not me, it's definitely you, and then hitting him with a long, long list of all the reasons why they're done. And they weren't quiet about it either. Right in the opening, they basically say that if you're going to do something as huge as breaking up with your government, common courtesy says you owe the world an explanation. This was their case, laid out for everyone to see. So, what exactly were these reasons for the big split? Well, the real meat of the Declaration is this list of 27 specific complaints against King George. This was their evidence, their receipts for why things had to end. Okay, we're not going to read all 27, but we can bundle them up into a few big themes. The colonists said the king was a tyrant who abused his power, that he was messing with their courts and laws, forcing a military presence on them, crushing them economically, and even waging war against his own people. This wasn't just a simple disagreement. They saw it as a total pattern of abuse. And that, right there, brings us to the whole point of this explainer. Are these complaints from 1776 just history, or do they still pop up in our political conversations today? Well, according to the sources we're looking at, the answer is a resounding yes. In fact, critics of former President Donald Trump make the case that his actions line up with at least 9 of the original grievances in the Declaration. That's right, 9. So let's take a closer look at how they connect those dots. All right, let's put it to the test. We're going to dive into 4 of the clearest examples these critics point to. We'll put the original complaint from 1776 side by side with the modern-day parallel they see. First up, the justice system. The colonists were absolutely furious that the king was meddling with their courts. They felt like he was putting his thumb on the scales of justice, making it impossible to get a fair trial. And you can see the parallel critics draw. Back then, the complaint was the king controlling judges by controlling their salaries and job security. The modern argument points to things like public criticism of judges and attempts to influence federal investigations as a new version of that same kind of obstruction. Now, this next one is really something. The founders literally accused the king of stirring up trouble inside the colonies, essentially pitting Americans against each other to keep his own power. And the connection critics make is to the rhetoric surrounding the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. The source material highlights that this very grievance, exciting domestic insurrections, was actually the specific charge in the second impeachment. Okay, this one is all about the democratic process itself. A major complaint was that the king would just dissolve their local governments and then block new elections, basically taking away their voice. The modern parallel, as drawn by critics, is tied to the efforts to challenge and overturn the certified results of the 2020 presidential election. The argument is that this represents an interference with the peaceful transfer of power, echoing that original grievance about a leader who won't respect the outcome of an election. And the last parallel we'll look at is about accountability. The colonists were outraged that British soldiers could commit crimes, even murder, and get away with it, shielded from punishment by the king. So, how does that echo today? Well, critics connect that grievance to presidential pardons for U.S. military members who were accused or convicted of war crimes. The argument they make is that these pardons undermine the military's own justice system and create a sense that some people are above the law. Okay, so let's zoom out. We've looked at these parallels, but why does this matter? I mean, why should we care about a 250-year-old laundry list of complaints in today's world? Because in the end, that list of grievances did way more than just start a war. It literally became the American blueprint for what a government should never do. It's not just a historical document, it's a living, breathing yardstick we can use to measure anyone in power. Which leaves us with one last thought. We always call the Declaration of Independence our nation's birth certificate. But maybe its real lasting power is that it's also a timeless test. A checklist for any government in any era that asks one very simple question. Are you here for the people, or are you here for yourself?